And Eric, meanwhile, President Trump's cabinet starting to take shape as he enters week 2 of his presidency. The president's pick to head Veterans Affairs, Dr. David Shulkin, will go before the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee on Wednesday, and Shulkin is no stranger to the VA. Our next guest sits on the Veterans Affairs Committee, one of a handful of committees, in fact, Republican Senator Jerry Moran of Kansas. Senator Moran, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, good morning. Good to be with you.
Thank you. And as we said, Dr. Shulkin is certainly not new to the department. He served as Undersecretary of Health the past year and a half during tumultuous times. So how can Dr. Shulkin serve as the fixer if given control over the VA?
Well, Arthel, I think that's the question. I mean, what I want to be reassured from Dr. Shulkin, and we met earlier this week in my office, had a fine conversation, but I want to make certain that the VA is going to be led in a way different than what we've seen in the past. It's going to take significant, in my view, shakeup at the VA because I think we've been lacking the necessary leadership to change the bureaucracy, the culture of the Department of Veterans Affairs. I've served on the Veterans Committee since I came to Congress. It's always had its challenges. It's a big bureaucracy that has lots of men and women to serve. But the reality is, in recent time, it seemed as if the drive, the motivation to get things right diminished. And I attribute that to just the bureaucratic nature, the higher level executives. Many times the VA does things well and does it right. I get compliments from Kansas veterans for the VA regularly, but way too many veterans are falling through the cracks. And there's been a lack of accountability and a lack of motivation or drive to make sure that no veteran doesn't receive the kind of care and treatment that he or she deserves by serving our country.
And Senator, you mentioned bureaucracy about 5 times there, just in a short period of time. So clearly the VA system is bleeding. If confirms, more specifically, what would you say are the critical wounds that would need Dr. Shulkin's immediate attention? And realistically, how quickly could he fix the problems, and then what injuries fall next in line?
You know, we've been through a couple of secretaries of Veterans Affairs during the Obama administration, and Dr. Shulkin has served in that administration for about 18 to 20 months. So he has some experience. And what I want to know is he going to be somebody who is a changer as compared to the status quo? The status quo is insufficient for me and for many veterans in Kansas and across the country. And he can convince me of that, although he needs to do it. And that hearing will be a way to accomplish that. I've also outlined a couple of things, what we call casework, issues with certain veterans in Kansas that I'd like to see if Dr. Shulkin can solve. So what he can do as a new secretary is, take care of people who do things wrong within the VA. Too often we see that if you make a mistake, if you are lackadaisical about your job, if you demonstrate lack of care and concern for veterans, you simply get transferred someplace else within the VA system. The VA desperately needs accountability, and it's been lacking for a long time. So that's a start. We also need to have the choice program. That's a law that was enacted by Congress a couple years ago, signed into law, and it says if you are a veteran that lives long distances from a VA or the VA can't provide the service in a timely fashion, the VA will allow you to see a hometown physician or be admitted to a hometown hospital. That's very important for states like Kansas, and it's very important for veterans who can't get the care in a timely fashion, and yet the VA has implemented that legislation very poorly, very slowly, and with just a bunch more bureaucracy. The solution to our problems at the VA, if you convince me that the VA, our veterans are needing more money at the VA to take care of their needs, I'm one that you could convince of that. Mm-hmm. But not at the moment. What we need is less
overhead, less
just bureaucracy and junk that comes the way. Okay, it's not about money. It's about doing the job right.
Right, less overhead in the form of, pardon me, department heads, et cetera. Pardon me, let's talk money, because as you're also on the Appropriations Committee, I want to talk about funding the wall. I mean, the current price tag is somewhere between $12 to $15 billion. And as you well know, when President George W. Bush signed the Secure Fence Act into law almost 10 years ago, 2006, a little more than 10 years ago, the estimated cost then was close to $5 billion, not $12 to $15 billion. So what do you think, Senator Moran, about U.S. taxpayers footing the bill up front, and are you confident that Mexico will reimburse the U.S., and will those repayments come in a form that will, be effective and make us whole?
Well, I've certainly seen what the president has said. I think this is the time for Congress to have the necessary hearings. The appropriations process needs to work. It seems difficult to me to envision the circumstance in which Mexico actually pays for the wall, but I'd be delighted to hear how that could be accomplished. But I think Congress now needs to prioritize. The border is important. National security matters. Who comes across our borders is a law enforcement and national security issue, and Congress very well may be willing to prioritize this as spending. But we need to have the story in place that then convinces us that it will actually work, and it will mean that we will have to spend money less someplace else.
And that's going to be the key, and that's what we'll be looking forward to hearing what you and your fellow lawmakers come up with. Senator Moran, really appreciate your time with us here on Fox News this Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for caring about veterans.
Of course.